So, Marice Tobias, welcome.
Thank you.
This is a really big treat to have you here. One of the things, well, I always like to start off with something really positive. And one of the things I've noticed about you since I've known you is that you have this inherent, intrinsic, systemic, positive energy that flows out of you. And I don't know where you get it from, but I've always appreciated that you're always like, well, it's just the way things are until they're not, or keep fighting. And where do you get that from? Where do you get this positive slant?
Oh, gosh, where I get it from, excuse me, I don't know where I get it from. I just know that that is how I see. I think the philosophy is, what's the alternative and how useful is it? So that, there are personalities that like to be negatively predictive. And I'm going, and how is that helping?
Boring.
It's what I call negative narcissism, where you're constantly in a state of predicting how something isn't going to work out. And then if it doesn't, then you get to be right about that.
Right.
And I'm thinking, okay, and then what does that give you? As opposed to, I think I made an agreement with myself a while back, and I said to myself, I want to get to a point where I can hear anything as information, even if maybe it hurts my feelings or it isn't the outcome that I thought. I'll allow myself to have the feelings and the emotions. Yeah. But then, frankly, what's the gift? Because everything happens for a reason. And if you can go, okay, so I learned something here, then you can turn everything into a positive experience. And am I talking about hurricanes, and am I talking about, disasters where people are really suffering? Well, of course not. Yeah. One of the things we are seeing, though, is the resilience of the human spirit in a lot of what's going on now, and galvanizing people to action. Yeah. So when we look back in history, whether it's our own personal history or our countries or globally, will we see that in some way we were projected forward? Because I think that ultimately my theory is we're here to learn. That's the meaning of life. I think we're here to learn. Yeah. Life is a metaphor for the lessons of the soul. And this is a classroom. But
that's such a healthy perspective. That it really is. I mean, you're essentially reframing, which is what a personal coach of mine said.
Yes.
If something negative happens, how can you reframe it to find the gift?
Exactly.
To turn it into a lesson, or whatever you want moving forward, so you can take something from it and not just be like, oh, well, look what happened to me or whatever. As a child, were you sort of like this positive little girl running around going, hey, you know what? This happened. This is okay. Has this always been this flow for you, like this way of looking at life? Like,
I was the grown-up in my family. I had parents that were emotionally challenged in terms of dealing with life on a practical level. One was extremely emotional and cried all the time and very, an extreme narcissist, and the other was shut down to a point of being almost autistic. So this was my reality. Wow. And so I was very pragmatic, and I was a grown-up little child, and but I guess the only role left for me was to be positive, because I had these two negative personalities around me. When a child shows up in a family, there's a kind of unwritten contract of, okay, you're going to be the star. You're going to be the hero. You're going to be the problem child. When you're the only child, you're everything. But I wasn't the problem child, because that was, my parents had those roles. So I had to be you had to be the negotiator, adult. The compromiser, I decided, at a very young age, what houses we were living in, and some very big decisions. Yes. Wow. And so I was an old child, and my theory is that you go through all the ages and stages of life in the arc of your life, but not necessarily in order. So
That is a great way of looking at it. Wow.
So I'm having my childhood every once in a while.
I love that. That's really cool.
You know, my philosophy about chocolate, have it early in the day because you never know.
If you'll get it later.
Yeah, absolutely. It's preventative chocolatizing or whatever.
Wow. Can you, you shared with me at lunch the other day about your mom. Can you talk about that a little bit? About her being, she was partially deaf or?
She was, without her hearing aids, she was pretty much, She lip read.
Yeah.
But so as, you know, very, very early on, I took on the role of being her ears.
Right.
And I think that's why my listening is so refined.
Yeah.
As I say, I can't see worth a damn. I started wearing glasses when I was pretty young.
Yeah.
And the computer hasn't helped. But my listening, my business partner, Peter Cutler, has said there was a way that someone described someone in the industry, and he said, you know, it's probably the same where you can hear a mouse peeing on a blotter in China. So, like, we did a recording session this morning, and I, you know, Harrison was, you know, your engineer was next to me, and I said, we're doing pops and so forth. He said, oh, yeah, you know. So I do pick up stuff, and not so much on the technical level, but the emotional and the intention level. That's where I work.
Well, that's what I was going to say. You've become kind of an emotional surgeon.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like the way you can go inside of people and, you know, turn dials and cut things and, you know, let's not do that anymore. That's no longer, let's open this up. Let's open up that channel. You know, was that your thing when you got into it, or that's just developed over the years? Like, you know, because it's amazing what you're able to do.
Thank you.
It's a next level thing for me. I mean, I've worked with a lot of different coaches and hundreds of voice directors over my career, but you just kind of,
I see myself as like the you know, the clock tinkerer.
Yeah.
You know, go in there with those tiny little instruments and just make a little adjustment here.
Yeah.
And because everything's going, you know, the ball is in play.
Yeah.
And, you know, how come or when this happened, I think we all are given an intuitive gift. Mm-hmm. And some people interpret that into fine art, and some people turn it into business. Some people turn it into, you know, it's applied based on your personality and your interests or your opportunities. But we all have something. And so whatever this is, and, you know, people have decided to you know, assign different ways. First, it was the voice shrink. Then it's the voice whisperer. And basically, I listen through the words. And I listen to the relationship of the performer or the speaker to the words. Mm-hmm. And then sometimes I often get an image that I don't understand, but I know that's a message I'm supposed to deliver. So I will say to someone, I don't know why I want to say this. And sometimes I won't say it in the group, like I did a group here this weekend. And I took a couple of people aside and I said something to them. And often I don't know why I'm saying it. They will know why. And so someone told me years ago that it's called audio voyant as opposed to clairvoyant.
Say, is there some clairvoyance?
Yes.
Are you receiving messages about people and their careers and their personalities and emotions to, like...
Because I'm not thinking it, I'm feeling it, and I'm seeing something projected out here like a canvas, but it's not actually a picture. That's the best way I can describe it. And I'll just say, the experience that really I think was the most vivid for me was I was working with a woman, and this was in a group some years ago, and I said to her, why do I hear someone yelling at you? And she's reading a script. And she goes, oh, what's he saying? So she immediately knew who it was. And I said, he's saying, suck it up, soldier. She goes, oh, that's my father. I said, oh, okay. But I knew there was more. And I just waited, and she said, well, I've been married and divorced twice, and both of them were military men. Okay. And she said, and I was in the service. I said, why'd you make me work so hard? I said, my goodness. So that's why your words are coming out with such rigidity and such lack of emotion.
Yeah.
Gorgeous instrument,
Yeah.
gorgeous sound.
Yeah.
But the storytelling wasn't there. The feeling wasn't there because she had had it bred out of her since birth.
Right.
So that was her challenge and journey, was to allow the emotion to come in, to allow feeling to come in. And that's ultimately, we're in the feeling business.
Yeah.
That's the takeaway of everything. Everything in our life boils down to how we feel. And that, so performers and creative people and artists are all about expressing feeling. And of course, that's very scary to a lot of people.
When you said to me on Friday, and we talked, about some of my stuff, and you were like, you have this intensity, like that's been rolling with me for 3 days now. And you really hit a chord, because that also comes from my dad and him being super tough on me and me just being like, I got to be the Hulk here and just be a superstar and like, I'll show you and I'll be hard on myself. And it just really, at first it kind of bothered me because I was kind of like, what? That's still coming across that intensity?
I know. I get what, is my core thing too. It's basically what our, psychologists will call it the false self. I call it the public self. It's that version of ourselves that we've created to protect ourselves. It's like the least amount of us out in the world before we get killed off in some way. So we put, just a little toe in the water and see if that's okay.
Right.
And most of the time that's what we're walking around. So there's this iceberg of emotion and being and persona that doesn't get expressed a whole lot for the average person.
Yeah.
But the actor and the creative person, that's the toolkit, that's the palette from which you paint.
Yeah.
So the training of an actor, the training, is basically, you're peeling the layers of the onion, however you want to describe it. It's a therapeutic process.
Totally. And doing therapy will help you.
Yes.
Because you'll get to the root of your own emotional intelligence, which I did starting way back in 2002. I started peeling the layers of my own stuff because you can't escape your childhood without baggage.
No.
It's the way it works.
Somebody
it's
said to
almost
me,
designed to do that, is it not?
It is. It certainly is set up that way. I don't know if, there are tribes that don't raise children that way.
Yeah.
So we could take a page out of there. Right. But, someone said to me, does it always go back to mom and dad? And I said, sadly, I think it does.
Yeah.
It's certainly, it can't help but influence you because that's what bringing up a child is. You're influencing them.
Yeah.
You're giving them a set of values and a way of being, consciously or unconsciously.
Yeah.
And then, if you're living an examined life, you spend a lot of your young years or into maturity getting over it.
Yeah.
Coming to
getting
a place.
To the root of who you are.
Yeah.
Who am I in here?
And putting yourself together from aspects of behavior that are of your choice rather than reactive.
Yeah.
So, we all go through that, whether we ask for it or not.
Would you say if you don't deal with, both parents and that stuff, that you're just walking around with 50 extra pounds of weight that you got to try to manipulate into, like within your performance? And when you perform, I got to hold on this bag while I'm doing this read here, rather than, I'm a lot lighter and here I am. Here's my vulnerable self. Here's my personality. Here's my emotion. Do you know what I mean?
I do, but it does, it doesn't ever go away.
Yeah.
You can lessen the volume.
Yeah.
You can lessen the impact, but it's still there because it's what got you to where you are.
Yeah.
So part of it is, what's the good?
Yeah.
Like the fact that my mother was hard of hearing, I'm a world-class listener. I think that's my greatest gift, is that I listen.
Yeah.
And as far as my father being emotionally inaccessible and so forth, has given me an understanding of my male clients. An understanding that just because they're not showing it doesn't mean it isn't there.
Right.
And that it's my understanding of how to nudge them in the direction so they feel safe to express emotion without feeling that they've completely lost their power base or,
Right.
you know, whatever it is that's so important for them to hang on to with this public self that they're projecting. Women have, you know, a whole nother set of issues that in a way shows up the same, but the derivation is different. Men need to prove that they deserve their success. Women need to prove that they belong at the party. In a way, it's similar, and yet in a way, it isn't.
And that was another thing we talked about
Yes.
on Friday, was that sense of me owning my career to another level. It's not like I don't own it. I do. But it's almost like you've got to, you have to continue the ownership. You've got to increase the ownership, or else it right? I mean, to
Well,
that
it's
level.
allowing yourself to be very matter-of-fact about the fact.
Right.
Like I quote Don LaFontaine. He was interviewed some years ago. Of course, he's left us for a show in the States called Dateline.
Yeah.
And at one point, the interviewer, who was Josh Mankiewicz, said, well, why do you work so much? How come you're the guy that works more than anybody else? And Don very matter-of-factly said, I'm very good at what I do.
Yeah.
I'm uniquely qualified for it. And then he talked about his background and so forth. But he was unabashed in his ownership of the fact, yeah, I do have something to offer. And with the understanding that nobody's perfect everywhere. And so, but if you don't believe in what it is you have to offer, what you're basing your career on, then why should we?
Yeah.
And so that, that's also communicated every time someone delivers a piece
totally.
of material. Is, are they believing, or are they asking you to cut them some slack? Do you like me? It's am I okay?
Yeah.
That's not what should be in the read.
No.
The trying to get the job read, I always say, the trying to get the job read never books. It's the doing the job.
Yeah.
It's knowing this is what I do. I'm actually quite good at it. And there's other things. I can't balance my checking account. I mean, I have, I'm dyslexic, so I get lost a lot.
Yeah.
And and the good news there is, unless I'm late for something, I just went, oh, that's where that is. So, okay.
Yeah.
Now I know
Yeah.
where that is if I ever have to get there. And I anchor landmarks more than addresses and so
Right.
forth, because pretty guaranteed I will go in the opposite direction, even with navigation.
I said turn left,
Right.
Marice.
I know. You mean the other left.
So where's because I've never known another Marice.
Right.
Where is that name from?
That was my grandfather's name, and my parents
Oh.
took the U out. Yeah.
That's what I wondered. Because
Yeah.
you must get a lot of Maurice
Oh,
people,
yes,
right? It's Maurice,
yeah,
Maurice, and
yeah.
you're like, no, Marice.
When I get the phone calls, is Mr. Tobias there? And I go,
Yeah.
this is Mr. Tobias.
This is Mr.
Yeah,
Tobias.
right. Yes, you're speaking
What about
to.
Tobias? Where's that from?
Oh, that's a biblical name, actually.
Oh, okay.
Tobias travels with the angel Gabriel, which I think is rather prescient.
Okay.
When I was in Chicago, my first trip to Chicago, we went to the Art Institute, and I think it's the first landing with the magnificent marble staircase is a statue of Gabriel.
Yeah.
And down at the bottom, and it says, the label on it says Gabriel and Tobias. I'm going, what? And he's the little archangel that travels with Gabriel, who's the messenger. I'm going, wow, maybe that should be my
So
logo.
you're the voice messenger.
Yeah, I'm the I'm the little sidekick
Yeah.
to the messenger.
Right. Right.
I am.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so his
I
name
like
is
that.
Tobias, and so it's biblical.
So is that a middle name then, and you have a last name, or
My
Tobias?
middle name is Jean, Jeanne. So
okay.
the correct pronunciation of my name is Marice Jeanne, but I'm having a tough time selling it.
Oh, it's French.
Yeah.
Oh, so you have your French background.
Background.
Oh,
yeah.
got it. Okay.
French. I had
Wow.
my ancestry thingy done, and it said Middle European.
Yeah.
And just knowing my, the family journey,
Yeah.
because we've been in this country since before the revolution. I'm told we helped finance the revolution. You never think about the fact that, we're going to form a country, but we need some money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who's gonna pay
Come
for
on,
all this?
George.
Yeah.
You've got a lot of money. You put some money in the kitty and let's start a country.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that would be a great bit for Saturday Night Live, financing.
The country.
Ben,
Start.
we know you're cheap. This is no time to show it.
So when do you think the modern voiceover business started? Was it like when was it that someone like me would, go to a studio, get a script, do an audition or a session for a commercial or a promo or narration or animation series? When did that? Is that
Well,
the 80s? Is that when it became a thing? Like,
no,
I do voiceover.
think it was earlier. I think it was
70s?
earlier. I think it. I mean, voiceover is an outgrowth of broadcasting.
Yeah.
The radio commercials that first the on-air talent read.
On air, and then they had the in-house announcers at networks.
Right.
At NBC who would sit in a booth and actually do the. Well, right now
That's
you
right.
can get Downey's to the do.
Right, and they would wait. They would wait for their top of the hour cue, and the rest of the time they're sitting there with a cigarette and the racing form. and so yes, and the union contract was you had a live announcer, a human being, sitting there hour after hour doing the top of the station identification, and then the broadcasters. And, whatever the commercials were, that was what they did when they either came in earlier or got off the air. And it's still the case. Yeah. On-air talent are still doing that.
Yeah.
And then
for radio,
when voiceover really became a separate thing, I would say was probably in the 30s and the 40s.
Oh.
And it started with the radio shows and the offstage announcers.
Okay.
And I think again, there was just an evolution from one person wanting their agent to handle something or an ad agency wanting to hear other people read, not just the guy that was doing their show. Right. However that worked. It wasn't a hard, fast, okay, we have a new industry called voiceover.
Yeah.
How
it's sort of blended.
It was just a slow dissolve into
into what it is. Yeah.
But going back to when voiceover started being marketed as a separate division of a talent agency, my understanding is because I heard a 78 record recording that CED did, probably in the early 60s.
A mini record.
No, it was big. 78.
78.
78.
Okay, yeah.
And Paul Doherty, who's one of the owners of the agency now, brought it to one of my seminars and played it for us. And, hello, this is Carol O'Connor. I'm an actor. Because he's Brit. Yeah. And he's, reading something for soap. I'm reading, or whatever it was, or cornflakes.
70s.
60s.
Oh, 60s, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And so, so that was probably the early days where it was on a vinyl record. And then it moved to, I guess, cassette was the
tape,
next.
Yeah. That's my first demo.
That's probably when I, the tail end of cassette, moving into CD. Yeah. And so what you're starting to see there is that the technology is evolving how the industry behaved.
Yeah.
And so, so for example, with CD, there were just so many slots on a CD for an agency. Yeah. So that kind of limited how many people they could represent.
Right.
Same thing with the cassette. The thing about cassette was you were doomed if you were in the middle of the alphabet because nobody got that far.
Yeah.
You were at the first or the last, you got, somebody listening. But in the middle, I don't think anybody ever listened to the middle during the cassette years.
Yeah.
And even when you sent out your demo, they'd fast forward.
Right.
Because they could. Yeah. And even with CD, you could kind of skip around.
Skip a track, yeah.
But now with, with this unlimited capacity, people have an equal chance of being heard.
Yeah.
And every other iteration and every other development and evolution has changed the manner in which we do business.
One of the things I find amazing about you is that you are, if there's imagine a giant spider web, in the modern voiceover area, I would say whenever you started, I don't know I think it was the 80s when you started doing all this, or was it before that?
The traveling I started in the 90s.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's anybody that's connected in this giant spider web the way you are, where you're like, oh, I was working with Don, and then I was working with, what was the guy that you were
Marlon.
Yeah, Marlon Brando.
Yes.
And then you're working with agencies, and then you gave Wes a shot to go to Los Angeles from Toledo or wherever he was.
Columbus.
Columbus, Ohio, who's my agent in Los Angeles. from, Ashton to Joe Cipriano to David Kay to Jim Conrad, a couple of Canadian guys who are doing well down there.
Yeah,
It's
I would
bizarre
say
how
rather
you
well.
are.
Yeah.
It's bizarre how I don't know if there's anyone else like you that's connected in the spider web like you are.
I'm kind of the Waldo of voiceover.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, where
there
am I
she
this
is.
week? Right.
There she is. Like it's pretty amazing how that's happened, and and it doesn't kind of matter really where. It's like New York, LA.
Oh, it's the
Chicago,
same conversation.
Dallas, Miami, Vancouver,
Yeah.
Toronto.
Yeah, the
Like, you just
complaints are the
kinda-
same.
Yeah.
The talent complaints are the same. The agent complaints are the same. I mean, it's like everybody went to how to be in voiceover, and if you're going to
Yeah.
be an agent, this is what you're going to be pissed off about. If you're a talent, this is what you're going to, and it doesn't matter where you are.
So let me ask you this. You've worked with probably thousands of talent.
Yeah.
What is the top 3 battles for voiceover people? What do you think it is? What's the top 3?
Oh, man.
Is that hard
Only
to-
3?
Is that or 5? I mean,
Oh,
if there was
gosh.
3 to 5 things that you could sort of if you had to boil it down, because we're all the same. We're all people just trying to get our emotions out, tell a great story, put our individual spin on not sell it, have some authentic line to an emotion that we can draw from that fuels us in the spot that we're doing. Like, what are some of the battles that you find common in amongst all of these? And I don't care if it's, Ashton to Daingerfield to what's the...
Well, I can tell you what, even before I work with someone, I say to them, I'm going to tell you some notes, and I haven't even heard you read yet.
Okay.
Number 1, you're working too hard. Number 2, cut the volume. Number 3, lose the headphones. Now, get that out of the way. Let's just get that boilerplate, and then we can, now we got game.
Yeah.
Because those
Why are people
3,
working too hard?
proving, insecurity, not understanding, not letting the microphone do the work. I often say it's a microphone, not a megaphone. The other is understanding the environment in which our information is now received. The environment is smaller and smaller and smaller. Hence, everything has become more intimate.
Right.
So cutting the volume is essential. I said to somebody in the weekend, I said, it's pillow talk. I said, you wouldn't turn to, your partner and say, honey, I love you, and see if they, oh, I love you too.
Yeah.
She's hovering in a corner.
Right.
It's just proximity. So you look at the smaller screens, the tablets, the phones, the watches, the glasses. I mean, soon it'll be just holograms.
Yeah.
I mean, and you realize that we've gone from what was called broadcasting to narrowcasting. And that, it used to be always, we'll talk to one person. Well, now you really are. You really are only talking to one person at a time. And so that's a different relationship. That's, having a nice dinner with a friend.
Yeah.
And it's, all these cliches are around because cliches are true.
Yeah.
Doesn't make them, any the less viable because people have used them. And it's just a matter of understanding that there are certain aspects of the work that change, once again, because of the technology, the manner in which people want to receive information. I often refer to this business as a fashion-driven business because communication does have its vocabulary that comes in and out of fashion. My cousin, who I miss terribly, was more like my brother, used to use the word hep. And I go, Bill, you've got to stop saying that. No one says hep anymore. It's hip. But hep is like, I mean, he wasn't even around.
H-E-P? Or
You like hep cats.
Oh.
Going back to like the 30s and the 40s.
Oh, okay.
Because maybe his parents used that word or something.
Right.
But I mean, the bula bula, and no one says that anymore either.
No.
There's just certain things, certain phrases that come and go.
Yeah.
And we are the communicators, so we should make sure that our vocabulary is up to date.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, totally. It's almost like you really do have to keep your whole game up to date.
Yes.
How you look, how you dress, you know, like your information, it's like the same, right? Everything has to be kind of.
When I first went to Chicago, I went there in the summer, and Chicago, and I'm headed there shortly. It's my last seminar of the year.
Mm-hmm.
It's the weekend before Thanksgiving. I just adore the city. I love the people I work with and so forth. And I was astonished because when I first went there, it was in the 90s, and people were, coming to my workshops or working with me privately from gigs and stuff, and they were wearing shorts and flip-flops and so forth, and they were going up to the ad agencies like that.
Yeah.
And I said, you can't do that. Well, it's summer, and I know you have 4 minutes of summer and you want to have as much fun as possible.
Yeah.
But you must respect the fact that the people you're working with actually have to wear real clothes every day and be there for a certain amount of time. And you come flip-flopping in,
I know,
making more money than they're making all week or all month.
Yeah.
I said, don't give them reasons to be any more resentful than they already are, because it looks like you're having way too much fun. And if you come in, like you just left the pool, that's even rubbing more salt into the wound.
Yeah.
But it really has to do with respecting yourself as a professional and the industry and the people you're working with. Well, now, of course, there's, you can do voiceover in your underwear.
That's right.
Well, just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Yeah.
Put clothes on.
Yeah.
Go to work.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just...
I've started doing that more and more, actually, at home.
Yeah. There's a certain proper, respect. There's a certain, we all know that there's certain pieces of clothing that make us feel a certain way.
Absolutely.
Well, why not wear that when you're working?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the shirt I'm wearing today, when I was at my session this morning, standing at the mic, I was like, I feel good. I feel good.
And the clients that I've known over the years who go up for commercials and so forth, they know what clothing they've booked with more.
Yeah.
And they don't care if, they see the same casting director all week in the same blouse or the same outfit. That's their booking shirt.
Yeah.
That's their booking look.
Yeah.
And
on camera and stage actors do the same thing. They get into the character of who they're playing based on the clothing, and that helps them get further into it. And so why is it any different? I mean, a quick story. When I went out from the first animated series that I ever got, the Ace Ventura series, I actually went to the very first audition in a Hawaiian kind of crazy Jim Carrey Ace Ventura shirt. And I wore it actually for all the auditions and then for the entire series. I wore it to the session.
It's a template. It's a touchstone.
Because, when you're kind of looking down, you're sort of about here when you're at the mic. And all I could see was bright yellow and blue and green colors down here. And it was like, this is my playtime shirt. I'm getting ready to go crazy now. And that kind of was, you know what I mean? It was perfect. Yeah. So.
Yeah. No, those are our props.
Yeah.
Why not use them?
Yeah. Yeah.
And, if you're doing a series on History Channel, I don't think you should be doing that in your underwear. I just don't think you should.
No, maybe put something nice on.
Just because you can.
Yeah.
Again,
Yeah. No, that's, I think, and I've always noticed with you, like you always have a classy, high-end look. I've never seen you, I've seen you in various situations throughout the years, but I've just never seen you kind of like, not quote unquote slumming it, but just even almost casual. You always seem to be upscale casual to me, at least. I'm
wearing jeans today. I'm actually wearing jeans.
Are you? Okay.
Yeah, I'm wearing jeans.
Well, they're nice jeans.
And this is, like a glorified sweatshirt. It qualifies.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah.
That's who, I like that. I love fashion. I'm not a fashionista. I can't wear high fashion.
Yeah.
But I think it makes me feel a certain way. If I was coming in here, even my sweats are kind of cool.
Yeah, I'm sure they are.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, this whole like technology and its impact, because the last 3 years I would say has been this because the online stuff's been going on for a while, Voice123 and Voices.com, but last 2 to 3 years has been very interesting in how that technology has changed. And I was thinking, like, almost as a little sidebar thing, how are we going to look back at this time in 500 years? Do you think they're going to look back at like, well, this was the time when the internet made a huge difference on voiceover as a business as a whole?
No
Do you know
question.
what I mean? Like,
I think in a way we were the most impacted sooner by virtue of the fact that we're a voice-generated business. I think that where we are now is a massive transition, and it has a lot of people worried. And, I'm always looking at what's the leverage that you have as an individual creative person. And that's why going forward, I'm putting a lot more emphasis on the comprehensive branded statement that you're making as a creative professional, so that you basically rise above the fray. When you've got people competing from across the planet, different skill sets, some amazing and some not so much, but a lot of people are buying for, price. You want to be selling a point of difference statement about yourself. Why do you deserve, or why should I, as a producer, pay a premium to work with you? Well, because that statement carries over to the message you're sending and the product or the service or the idea you're representing. There is a difference. Quality does make a difference in terms of the statement that you're making. Well, we have to make a quality statement about ourselves. And when I say quality, I'm not necessarily saying snooty or upscale. I'm saying, what is it that's unique, special, and different about you, so that I have to go to your boutique, which is either your website or your agent or wherever it is, to get that thing that you do that will give me and my product, service, or idea a standing in the vast chaos of competition that I'm up against. So it's those distinctions, and the more you reinforce that, the more you become an iconic person in the landscape of choice. And it doesn't matter at that point how many other people are competing, because it's you or it's not you. And this is where people get a little nervous, because I talk about being a brand, having a signature, and having a website now. I do everything from the initial, because I have a background in advertising and marketing, promotion. So everything from the initial idea of what it feels like to be in the presence of their voice, a visual statement, a line, people call it a log line or slogan. A very short descriptor. The people who can hire you are not reading. They don't want to read. They see a block of copy, their eyes roll back.
I'm done.
And then, and that's not just it. That's not just making the sale for you. It's a scroll down to elements, and, your demos, full pieces, whatever else you want to put on there, that is information that helps me, the person who could hire you, understand what's in it for me. To me, everything we do in terms of marketing our talent and our abilities is the answer to what's in it for the person who can hire us. Not so much what we want them to know about us. Go write your autobiography, and, that's fine. That's another that's another thing. This isn't that. This is, you showing me what's unique, special, and different enough about you, especially if I've never worked with you before. Because that's a very scary thing you're asking me to do. The other thing is the person who sent out the opportunity, whether it's the person at the agency or the network or whatever, they're not the only decision maker. But they can become your champion if they get what it is that thing that you do, and that is what they're looking for. They didn't know they were looking for it. Now that they heard it, they want it. We don't care. As long as we get you in front of the microphone and the check clears, we're happy.
It's amazing what can happen when those people fall in love with you.
Well, and they'll move.
My God, it can just,
they change. A lot of producers are itinerant. And they go to other jobs, other networks, other companies. And if they have to get up and running quickly, they'll reach out to someone that they know can come through for them. And that's how your career expands, as well as your own marketing efforts. So there are so many levels that you're working on all the time. And let's face it, we're always looking for work.
Always.
And when I say we, I'm not a performer.
Yeah.
Ironically, a few weeks ago, I was in Portland. I'm actually going back weekend after next. And I was staying with a friend who is a top talent. And when I stay with somebody, I say, if you've got an audition, whatever, I'd be happy to work on it with you. So the last time I was there, worked out really well. Not only did she book the job, but they used the audition. It's a big project.
Fantastic.
So this time she's editing and so forth. And just out of curiosity, I step into her booth. Because I never step in a booth unless there's another person in there that I'm working with.
Yeah.
And I'm looking around, and she turns around. She goes, well, look at you. And I said, yeah, it's kind of cozy in here. She has a little chandelier and kind of spiritual kind of stuff around. I said, yeah, it's very pleasant in here. Because to me, a lot of those booths look like upright coffins.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, what do you need a booth for? Just insulate a room if you can.
Right.
And I understand if you're renting or whatever. Anyway, so I'm standing there, and she goes, well, something about, having read a piece of copy. And I said, no, I've never read a piece of copy. She said, how is that? How is that possible? I said, it's just never occurred to me. She said, well, so she rifles through a pile she's got on her deck, and she goes, here. And okay. So I, decided to think about my own, direction and so forth. And I did a few reads, and she gave me some notes. And then she has a little device on her deck there where she's got some pieces of music. And she just very quickly, she comes out of radio, and she's a very good producer herself, puts it together, and we step back and listen. And I listen as if I'm coaching that person.
Okay. And
so
how did she do?
And I said, she's not as accessible as I'd like her to be. She goes, what about the read? I go, oh, play it again. Because I listen through the words to see about the relationship of that person to her material, and I felt she was holding back. And she was, not consciously, but then, and I listened to the read, and I said, it's okay. I said, I don't think she should give up her day job. I think she's got a ways to go.
Because this is a good sort of tipping point into this. I mean, do you think as an exercise, 'cause I know one of your exercises is the character detour, which I love. And that's where you take the copy after, and you do it in some crazy, wacky voice. Could be an accent, could be just a crazy animated character, whatever you want. You read it through, and it's for me, I typically do it very amped up because that sort of gets all of my turbines to wake up, and then I can drop, be grounded, start again. And do you think that that's a good approach to take your copy and just kind of overdo it, knowing you're overdoing it, not that,
It's not so much the overdoing. It's going to a place where you're completely freed up.
Yeah.
Because the thing about a character is they are splinters of your personality.
Right.
That got sent to the bench.
Yeah.
Some point in your life because they were too something.
Right.
And they're sitting there in their pure form saying, put me in, coach.
Yeah.
So you bring them out because you can't do something that isn't there. And so you bring them out.
Yeah.
And the thing about the character is they live only in the moment.
Totally.
They have no attachment to the past and no anticipation of outcome.
No.
Therefore, they play full out.
Yeah.
And that, to me, is what's useful about it, is the freedom. And what's fascinating is that when someone does that, especially in one of the groups, is that a lot of times the groups go, well, that character really wasn't the guy you'd hire, but I liked the read. And it's because of the way they touched words. They gave themselves permission.
Yeah.
And it's not contrived. It's on the fly. So it's another place in your creativity that takes over.
So what is this fear of this, kind of I'm moving in the dark, I'm afraid to kind of move along, and what is the fear of really just going, okay, well, I'm going to sink into this?
Because the thing
fear?
We fear most in life is not death, it's humiliation. And we're so worried about embarrassing ourselves.
Yeah.
That's why there's so many times I've worked with very established talent that, just, well, honey, this is what I do and this is how I do it. And it's like, yeah, but you're here. Can we play?
Let's open this up, yeah.
Yeah, and it's the fear of not being as good as you are in the area where you have competency and people come to you and you don't want to show up as lacking.
Right.
And as I say, we fear humiliation more than death, because in death you don't have to hear the reviews.
But it just seems like the only way to expand is to allow yourself to fall. Like that's expansion is failure, isn't it? In a way, like
no, it's not.
Failure,
well, it's I think in sports the phrase is grow or die.
Yeah.
But yes, but on one hand people want to, on the other hand, they want to do it in such a way where it's painless.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that this is a painful process, but it is an ability, a willingness to let go. And there are times when, I'll say to someone like in a directed audition, I don't know why I want to say this, but, try this and let's see what happens.
Yeah.
So I take the curse off of it being perfect.
Let's see what happens.
Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
And that's really everything. Even when someone is very clear about the direction they want to take someone in, it's still an experiment until you hear the result and you go, okay, well, maybe we don't want to do that,
Experiment from freedom and allow it to
it's all about possibility. And no, and the other thing is, who will die? Will anyone die? And that to me is really the cutoff of whether you're going to experiment with something or not. Is anyone going to die? Well, then maybe not.
No.
But if it's not a life or death situation, but so many people, because what happens when somebody's embarrassed? What do they say? I could have died.
Yeah.
Or I wish I had.
Yeah.
So that fear of exposure and being embarrassed and maybe being made fun of and all of that goes all the way back to the schoolyard and all of that. I mean, it's so
It's in there, yeah.
It's a bedrock of protection. And that's part of what you go through in an acting class. I mean, the phrase about acting classes is it's a place to go and fall on your ass and learn something.
Yeah, yeah.
And so there's a legitimizing to that environment. But a lot of the work that I do, of course, is with the established working professional. Very, very high-end, accomplished careers.
Yeah.
Well, there's more on the line there.
Yeah.
They walk in the room and people go, oh, my God, I didn't know he was going to be there. Do you know she's the national voice of so forth?
Yeah.
And so
all just real people, though.
Your peers hold you in such high regard.
Yeah.
And then, sometimes it's hard for these people to let down their guard because they've got, a couple of fans sitting there.
All right.
Some years ago, I was asked by one of the agents to put together I guess it would be called a mastermind group for about 6 of their clients that were all top. But they were worried because there was no growth. They were doing very well. They're making lots of money. But they could see what was coming.
Yeah.
And these guys, they were all men at the time, were not adding anything new to their creative palette. And so they said, how do we do this? And I said, well, why don't we make it extremely exclusive? It was only 6 of them.
Yeah.
Nobody knows about it. And we meet in a hotel conference room, so there are no studios going, guess who was here this weekend and guess what they were doing.
Right.
And so it was this, kind of high-end group. And it was amazing to see the first fellow. First of all, I went, okay, so let's get started, introductions. Of course, they all know each other. And then it was... and it was the first person, and no one volunteered. And so fine, all right, I'll get this over with. And he gets in front of the microphone, and this is what's happening. And we were talking a high 7-figure career.
Wow.
And he said, I can't believe this. I said, I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled because you're going to get something out of this weekend now.
Yeah.
And he said, I can't believe this. I'm in front of you guys, and I want to, show up good. And they all go, you think we're not? And so they all, he gave everybody the permission to come clean.
Yeah.
They were all freaking out. And so
it doesn't
after
matter the
that,
level, right? It doesn't matter the level.
No.
Everybody's going through it.
Sure.
Yeah.
You think the Red Sox weren't worried?
Yeah, of course, right?
There was a lot on the line there because on one hand they're going, No, give it to the Dodgers, you know. Come on.
Oh, wow.
You know?
I'm not so sure about that.
But, you know, well,
Yeah.
Los Angeles felt that way anyway.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
you know
yeah.
what I'm saying? It's
Yeah.
like, be fair, you know.
Yeah,
No.
right.
No, that's not the game. The game is play to win.
Yeah.
And never let them see you sweat. And I mean, over the years, you know, I looked at the percentage of my clients, male and female, you know, the dominance has been male. And, you know, there are just so many rules you guys have. Never let them see you sweat, you know,
totally.
all
or
of
cry,
that.
Or, you know.
Yeah. Don't be a human
Yeah.
being.
Yeah.
And so that's, you know, that was a lot of that needed to get overcome. But I'll never forget that piece of paper
crazy.
shaking in his hand. And he was amazed at it, too. He says, I don't believe it. I don't get nervous anymore.
That's
He
amazing.
said the people that work with me get nervous because, you know, it's, you know, and they like that,
Yeah.
you know, because then they're only going to do what they do. Drop the, you know, do the pencil drop or the mic drop and, you know, get on their horse and ride out of town.
Yeah. One of the things that struck me too, you were coaching me on a thing in the summer for a promo thing, and you were saying one of my challenges was to let go of the editor brain that's still kind of there, still kind of listening, and just, you know, just let it go. Just go for the ride and see what happens. You know, stay and watch the golf ball the whole way, hit it, then, you know, as opposed to
do the critique afterwards, not while you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and that's all a fear thing too.
Well, yeah,
I
it's the loss of control. Control issues are fear issues.
Yeah.
And one of the aspects of losing the headphones is, you know, disengaging from monitoring your read while you're doing it and getting bulletins from your critic, because your critic never gives you a compliment.
Yeah.
And in the midst of the read, now you've gotten a bulletin. What are you doing about it?
Yeah.
If you're shifting the read and you're in a record session, you know, the producer's going, why did he just change in the midst? You know, what are you doing? Oh, I heard a pop, or, you know, I'm off access.
Yeah. Why did you do that?
And finish it out or start again.
Yeah.
But, I mean, you can't adjust a read in the middle of it. You'll turn into somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you don't count.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the main thing. This is not your call.
Yeah.
If you're doing...
It's hard to... And I'm getting much better at it throughout the years. And taking the headphones off really helped me. And you helped me do that in 2010. Of course, I booked, you know, Best Buy national campaign. It was amazing.
Great.
It's a great start to that whole thing. But it's, you know, just turning the brain off and just going for the ride. It's, you know, meditating has helped me huge amounts.
Yes.
'Cause there's not as much pinball going on. So you can just kind of be present in life and, you know, just in moments. But do you find that's a common thing? You know,
no, you're the only person I've ever worked with.
That is fantastic.
You're a unique.
Yeah.
No one has ever had any of those issues.
First one.
Yeah.
Wow, you've heard it here today, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes.
The first person to ever have an editor brain on. Yeah, no, it's that's an amazing, you know, because again, it's like you can, you know, we all can kind of do our thing that pays the bills and that, you know, is that we're good at. But to really let go, to really truly let go, is that next level of like,
that's
hey,
why
I'm cool to play here. I'm good.
If somebody
play.
asks, you know, should I take acting lessons because I come out of broadcasting or whatever, and I go, for an adult to commit to acting lessons in the context of your life and family and everything else, that's a lot. I commend you if you do it. I think it's great. If you don't have the time and you don't have, you know, and you want some immediate tools to work with, I'm a big fan of improv. And I think that helps you, because improv is in the moment, and you don't know what you're going to get from the other person, and they don't know what they're going to get from you, and it's all a big, grand experiment.
Yeah.
And my caution about improv is, if you're in a city where, you know, a lot of different courses are offered, go to the biggest and the best. Always go to the biggest and the best, especially in L.A., because there are a couple, you know, the Improv and the Groundlings, because the industry actually does go to those events and looks for new talent. A lot of the others, you're going to be playing, you know, you put on a show and your friends will come.
Right.
Same thing with theater.
Yeah.
So, be judicious about how you spend your time, where you spend your time and money, and get the very best training you can. Mm-hmm. It will pay off in the long run. It's like anything else. It's not a guarantee that if something's expensive, it will be the very best, but the chances are pretty good.
Yeah.
And it's only your career. Mm-hmm. So really make the best investment. And if you can't do everything all at once, parse it out.
Yeah.
But get the very best and get the quality, because you are entering at the competitive level. You've got to come in competing. There is no arc. It's not like a producer's going to give you a chance anymore. Some years ago when I was in Chicago, and this client I was working with said, "You know how I got my first commercial?" And I said, "No, I don't." He said, "Well, I used to do a lot of animatics and, test spots and so forth." Mm-hmm. And the agency producer said to me, "We felt like we owed it to you." I said, "Oh, my God, I can't imagine that happening now." Because years ago, you would go to the agency and audition, and you met these people, and after a while, it was like, we better throw Jerry a campaign because he's done 30 animatics for us, and, he's such a nice guy and so forth. Yeah. Can you imagine that happening now?
Not going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, so much has changed that gave people the opportunity to create a trust and get somewhere in the career based on that familiarity, that now you have to create it in your own marketing.
Yeah.
It's still the sense of somebody's got to trust you.
Yeah.
How do you create that? And how do you give them something to go on so they turn around and they become your champion to the rest of the creative group who are equally as terrified as you are about making the wrong decision?
Yeah. Because everybody's presenting to someone.
Yeah.
Everybody's got to,
they got to justify. Yeah. And that's why, when you're in a record session with a huge creative group and you've got to read it so many different times, a lot of that is just so that when they go back to the agency or the network, they're covered.
Yeah.
It's not that you didn't give them the read in the first 4 takes. You probably did.
Yeah.
But they don't want to get busted on, but did you get the such and such?
Right.
Yeah, actually we did.
Yeah.
So, they get to live another day.
Yeah.
I mean, the emotional and political environment that creative teams live in is pretty intense.
Oh, yeah.
It's
big money, and some of the money is not as big as it used to be.
Right, but the risk is.
Yeah.
And so they've got to make sure that they didn't, gotcha, Sure. So, yes, you have to read it in that weird, strange way that only that fellow on the end who is eating Chinese food and looking at his text asked for.
Well, Marice, we've run out of time, and I could sit here for 5 hours, not a problem. Maybe even throw a glass of wine down on the table, but that's not going to happen today.
Well, then I would be useless. It would be a monologue from that point on.
I don't think so. Listen, I hope we can do this again when you come back next year, and we could just sort of make it a regular thing of this. But I just want to acknowledge you for the person that you are.
Thank you.
The difference that you make in my life and thousands of people's lives throughout the years that you've been doing this work, and you're an amazing person, and I hope you know that deep down, because you really are.
Thank you, Michael.
Very special. I'm getting a little emotional. You're very special.
Me too.
Person. I mean that. You should know that and remember that, and we're all very grateful for what you do.
Thank you.
Yeah, we really are.
And thank you for this opportunity. This has actually been fun.
Yeah?
And I've been interviewed a fair amount. I try not to get too overexposed.
Too many times.
But this is probably the most fun interview I've done. So thank you for that.
That's good. That's good to hear. Awesome. Okay, well, to be continued.
Okay.
How about that?
Sounds good.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Thanks, everybody, for listening. We'll certainly catch you again. And look for Marice at Tobias Entertainment, tobiasent.com,
right.
E-N-T. She is a traveling... wonderful. I was going to say gypsy, but that's not. But
I am.
You kind of are a gypsy.
I really am. Yes.
But you're you kind of go everywhere. So just look on her website, and they can be subscribers on your.
Sure.
Is that possible?
Sure. And if I can, I'll just say I've got 2 more of my weekends left for this year. Weekend after next, I'll be in Portland, And then the weekend before Thanksgiving, I'm in Chicago. What a great way to wrap up the year.
Amazing. And then you may be in Toronto in January, February as well.
Oh, sure.
That's
yeah.
also coming up.
Yes. Yeah.
So just look for her. She may be in a city that's close to you. Fly to see her. It's worth every penny. And she also, there's all kinds of other stuff that work that she does in terms of demos, but that's all sort of a bit of an invite basis, I would say. You have to know the person that you're going to.
Oh yeah, I'm not going to just produce a demo because someone calls and wants one. Yeah.
So thank you so much for